Welcome to Fireside Gaming. The holiday season is upon us, and that means it's time to dive into the universe of the classic Christmas film, The Nightmare Before Christmas. At least, so long as you consider it a Christmas movie. My wife argues it's more of a Halloween movie than a Christmas one, but I think it's more of a Christmas movie that can be watched on Halloween too. Either way, this isn't a film review channel, so I must be playing a game instead, right? Right. This time around, it's The Nightmare Before Christmas, Oogie's Revenge for the PlayStation 2. This is actually the second Nightmare Before Christmas game I've reviewed. I checked out the first one, titled The Nightmare Before Christmas: The Pumpkin King, earlier this year for Halloween. I'll link off to that review in the corner. Just as a quick refresher, The Pumpkin King takes place before the events of the film, and then we have Oogie's Revenge, which, as the title implies, acts as a sequel to the Tim Burton movie. The Nightmare Before Christmas: Oogie's Revenge is a hack-and-slash game that plays in the same vein as Devil May Cry. I'll actually be referencing Devil May Cry a lot during this review, and there's good reason for that. The Nightmare Before Christmas: Oogie's Revenge was developed by Capcom and came out in 2004 in Japan. That places it directly between the releases of Devil May Cry 2 in 2003 and Devil May Cry 3 in 2005. Although we didn't get Oogie's Revenge in the US until after the release of DMC3. Even so, there's no denying that Capcom recycled some elements from the DMC series when making Oogie's Revenge. Let's take the combat for example. In this game, Jack Skellington comes equipped with a new accessory called the Soul Robber. This allows him to perform combo attacks on enemies due to its stretchy and transformative nature. Unfortunately, The Nightmare Before Christmas: Oogie's Revenge goes for much simpler combat compared to DMC. Jack only starts with a 2-hit combo, a spin attack, and a grab attack. The idea here is that kids would do better with simpler combat, and I can see where that argument is coming from. The problem is that it's clear who was buying Nightmare Before Christmas merch at the time. Teens. I already went over that in my Pumpkin King review, but basically there was no lack of love for the property from goth teens. The same type of teens that were likely already playing gothic-themed games like Devil May Cry, despite the M rating. So with that in mind, the sheer lack of options in terms of combat really does have a negative effect on the game. It gets better over time, with Jack eventually getting a 4-hit combo, as well as unlocking Christmas and Pumpkin King costumes that bring with them extra attacks and utility. However, it's still not enough. The best way I can explain it is that by the time I reached the end of Oogie's Revenge, the combat was starting to feel like the beginning of a Devil May Cry game. Which is to say that the game ended when the combat finally started getting good. Of course, that doesn't mean I wanted the game to last longer than it already did. I spent about 10 hours with it, and that's plenty of time for me. It wouldn't have been so bad, but there are some levels in the game that really drag out much longer than they need to. A couple in particular that took me way too long to get through are the Vampire Brothers and Hinterlands Part 1 chapters. The biggest problem for both of these levels comes down to the locked camera. It makes it hard to see all of the paths available to the player as it isn't freely movable. That's a real shame, as these levels really aren't all that long in concept. Both just require the player to track down a few objects and put them in certain places. Basic Resident Evil puzzle stuff, really. But the poor camera angles make them take way too bloody long. While that camera complaint is present in other chapters, most of them go by without too much fanfare. Players will complete simple puzzles and take out groups of bad guys, all while typically helping out one of the residents of Halloween Town. I should also point out that players get a rank when beating chapters. Yes, just like DMC. This awards them with more soul points to use for upgrades and consumable items in the shop. If players do well enough, they'll even earn a figure from levels too. These give me some major Resident Evil 4 vibes, even if this game came out a year before it. I collected a fair few of the figures from secret areas and such, but didn't go out of my way for them. On that same note, I also earned the Pajama Jack costume after beating the game. It doesn't have any extra abilities and is just for looks. There are other costumes to unlock as well, but yet again, I didn't feel the drive to obtain them. The chapters that I absolutely loved are those with boss fights in them. See, Oogie's Revenge doesn't just have your stock standard slap around the boss until their health is gone battles. Instead, players collect musical notes when attacking bosses. These notes fill up a bar in the upper left part of the screen. When it's completely full, the boss battle goes on hold for a musical battle. I love these, as they act as a great way to bridge the gap between the musical movie and this game. When these music battles take place, it's basically akin to a rhythm game. For the record, I kinda suck at rhythm games, which means I never really got to use these parts to their full advantage. The better players do during these musical segments, the longer they last and harder they get. Then they attack the boss with a collection of musical notes. And as you can likely guess, you do more damage the better you do. It's a fun way to mix up the combat while not feeling out of place in my opinion. Speaking of the music, The Nightmare Before Christmas Oogie's Revenge does something a little strange that I wasn't expecting. It reuses songs from the film, but places new lyrics over them. These mostly show up in the boss battles, but also occasionally pop up in levels too. Typically, the lyrics are two characters singing back and forth to each other. That includes Jack and Sally when he's saving her from a giant spider, as well as Jack and Oogie Boogie trading verbal blows during several battles in the game. It's definitely fun that they chose to reuse the songs with new lyrics, but some of the composition is hit or miss. That includes lines just not quite sounding right, or even coming across as a bit cheesy.
His plan was to deceive, but that should not make him so sad. And I am ready. Something's right here.
However, the rewritten lyrics in the final battle with Oogie stand out as one of my personal favorites.
This a trick? I'm not impressed. You're bad and now you're tall. It makes it all the more worthwhile to see a giant fall. I tell you, this giant's where you want to take a fight. There's danger.
What's really cool about this is the original voices of Jack and Oogie, Chris Sarandon and Ken Page, reprising their roles for the game. Catherine O'Hara doesn't return as Sally, but we do get Kath Soucie, who voices the living ragdoll in the Kingdom Hearts series instead. The non-lyrical music in the game is also solid, and that's mostly because it's wordless versions of other songs from the movie. There are also some original pieces that are exclusive to the game. My favorite of these is the Hinterlands. It plays in the level of the same name, and my gosh, I just love this track. Seriously, it's just so dang beautiful I could listen to it on repeat. Actually, that's exactly what I did while writing up the script for this video. You know what? I'm gonna go ahead and risk the strike and give you a quick listen to it. It's just too good to not. Also, just a quick note, I don't really have a whole lot to say about the graphics this time around. That's mostly because they just feel like a natural extension of the film, which I'm sure you can clearly tell from the game footage that's been playing throughout this video. Basically, they're good and have that signature Tim Burton appeal to them. I suppose now's probably the time to dive into the story of Oogie's Revenge, so here's your spoiler warning. The game picks up 1 year after the events of the film. Jack, the mayor, and the other residents of Halloween Town are celebrating another successful Halloween. Unfortunately, Jack is yet again finding himself growing unfulfilled from his duties as the Pumpkin King. This results in him seeking the aid of Dr. Finkelstein, who presents him with the Soul Robber. Jack takes the green gooey organism and sets off on an adventure to find something new. That doesn't go well, as Lock, Shock, and Barrel decide his absence is the perfect time to resurrect Oogie Boogie. This has Jack returning to the town sometime later, likely a couple of months considering Christmas is just around the corner, and discovering that Halloween Town has been taken over by Oogie's monsters. After that, we spend the next several hours clearing out Oogie's goons, taking down bosses, rescuing our friends, and collecting doors from the other holiday trees. In the final levels, we learn that Oogie Boogie has kidnapped the other holiday leaders from their worlds and intends to name himself the 7 Holiday King. Before he does that though, he wants revenge on Sandy Claus. This sees Jack setting off to the Hinterlands after telling the mayor to free the other holiday leaders. He does so, and we also get a few sweet moments of Jack and Sally expressing their feelings for each other. After this, Jack returns the holiday doors to their trees and makes for Christmas Town. He saves Sandy from Oogie's evil train, and they both chase after the bag of bugs after he steals Sandy's sleigh. The chase sees Oogie falling from the sleigh thanks to a convenient trick present placed in it by one of Sandy's elves. After this, Sandy Claus sets off to deliver packages to kids for Christmas, and Jack stays back for one last battle with Oogie Boogie. The final battle has Jack first taking on a giant version of Oogie sewn together with scraps from the holiday trash hill. During this initial phase, players can damage Oogie by lighting streams of gas on fire or knocking him over and attacking his head. After this defeat, we get one last musical battle against the Shadow and the Moon at night. I had to go through this fight a few times due to my lack of skill with rhythm games, and that really sucks because it meant I had to redo the first part of the battle as well. While that's a bummer, the final musical number really makes it worth it. Seeing Jack switch between his Santa and Pumpkin King costumes while battering Oogie with snowballs and streams of fire all while singing is an incredibly cool experience. Following this, we get another sweet meeting between Jack and Sally that mirrors the end of the film in what is a fun but repetitive callback. I think that's probably the best way I can sum up The Nightmare Before Christmas, Oogie's Revenge. It's neat to play through once if you're a fan of the film, but I don't know if I could recommend it to the average player. There's just too many negatives that hold it back from being a good game. Instead, I'd call it an okay one. The combat lacks complexity, the story repeats too many of the same beats as the film, and the rewritten songs are hit and miss, even if I appreciate the effort put into them and the song battles in the game. No matter the case, I am glad that I played Oogie's Revenge, if only for the fact that I discovered the Hinterland song. That's quickly becoming one of my favorite video game tracks and made the playthrough worth it on its own. With all that said, thank you for taking the time to watch through this video. If you're feeling particularly charitable due to the holiday season, I'd appreciate some likes, comments, and subscriptions under the tree. Have a Merry Christmas, and as always, take it easy.